He opened his front door to take his dog for a walk. Seconds later, he was face down on the porch, tased, handcuffed, and bleeding. Wrong house. No apology. But just as they dragged him away, heavy engines echoed down the street. Not more police. Something bigger. And someone inside those trucks wasn't here for a parade. Frank Delaney had always been a quiet man. Even before the war, he was more action than talk. But Fallujah changed him. He served 2 combat tours as a Marine Staff Sergeant. Saw things no one should. Lost friends he still speaks to, only in dreams. And when he came home, it was to a country that waved flags, but didn't always remember the names. He married once. Anna. Soft eyes. Fierce heart. The kind of woman who could calm a storm just by walking into the room. But cancer doesn't listen to medals or prayers. After she passed, Frank moved to the edge of town, bought a small cabin with a creaky porch and a stubborn garden. His only roommate now, Cody, a golden retriever with eyes too wise and a heart too loyal. Cody wasn't just a pet. He was trained, certified PTSD service dog. He knew when the nightmares came. He'd paw at Frank's chest, lick his hand, nuzzle him back to reality. No barking, no drama, just presence. Every morning Frank raised the flag. Every evening he folded it with the care of a funeral guard. He fixed his own fence, sharpened his tools, nodded at neighbors, but rarely stopped to chat. Most thought he was just another old vet. They didn't know what he carried. Last fall, someone broke into the cabin next door. Frank didn't sleep for days after that. Every creak in the night was a tripwire in his mind. One afternoon, a package arrived. No return address. Inside a small black device barely bigger than a car key. A single red button, and a note: Old Man Insurance. Press once, no questions. It'll reach me. Signed Coleman. An old squad mate. Now part of a veterans emergency network. Frank chuckled when he read it, but he put it on his keychain anyway. The device had one job: send a geotagged SOS with a preset message straight to Coleman's encrypted line. From there, it would alert a trusted military channel. Frank never pressed it. Not when the power went out. Not when Cody got sick. Not even when he collapsed in the garden once from dehydration. But this morning, when the boots pounded up his porch, when lasers danced across his chest and rifles screamed commands at a man who'd already given enough, Frank reached into his pocket and pressed it. No words, no dramatic plea, just a click, and a signal sent to a place that still remembered him. Frank didn't hear the knock. He didn't hear the yelling either. He was sitting in his recliner, noise-canceling headphones, over his ears soft classical music, playing the kind Anna used to love. His eyes were closed. Cody was curled up at his feet. Morning sun spilled through the blinds like warm molasses. Then, the door exploded. Search warrant hands where I can see them. Wood shattered. The porch trembled under the stomp of boots. Cody jumped up, barking. Frank yanked off the headphones, heart hammering. His vision was full of black helmets, vests, rifles pointed straight at him. He froze. One officer shouted, "He's got a dog." Another target confirmed. House 118. This is it. Dean frowned, checking the printout again. This says 118, but the digital warrant marked 120. The captain waved it off. Dispatch printed 118. That's what we go with. Dean hesitated, but the boots were already moving. Frank stood slowly. This is my... He didn't finish. Dean raised a hand instinctively. Wait! Something's off! But the taser had already fired. A red dot danced across Frank's chest. Taser, taser. The electric shock hit like lightning. His legs buckled. His head slammed against the wooden floor. Cody barked and lunged but didn't bite. He stood guard, tail stiff, growling low like he was trained to do. One officer raised his weapon. Back, aggressive dog. But another younger voice cut through the tension. Wait, he's wearing a vest. It's a service dog. Too late. Two officers wrestled Cody away, leashing him roughly as he whined and twisted. Frank tried to move, but his limbs were jelly. Pain throbbed through every nerve. He felt cold metal clamp around his wrists. Hands yanked him up too hard. He was dragged outside and dumped on his own porch knees, scraping wood eyes, blurred mouth dry. "This is my house," he croaked. No one listened. Inside, furniture crashed. Drawers flung open. Boots stomped across floorboards. Frank looked up and saw the numbers above his door. 118 Willow Creek, his house. One of the SWAT members, mid-30s, sharp eyes under his helmet, paused by the entryway. Lieutenant Dean. He glanced at his tablet. Then at the mailbox next door. 120 Willow Creek. His jaw tensed. He stepped over to the team leader. "Sir, are we sure this is the right address?" The leader waved him off. "Confirmed target. Intel said 118. Don't question it." But Dean looked again. The house next door was nearly identical. Same porch swing. Same blue shutters. Only difference, one number. Back on the porch, Cody broke free from his handler and bolted back to Frank, pushing his head under Frank's arm. Frank didn't flinch. His eyes were empty. Valor. He whispered not Cody's real name, but the name he used when the world felt dangerous. Dean knelt beside him. "Sir, do you live here alone?" Frank didn't respond. Dean looked at the leash, the tags, the service vest. He stood slowly and walked back toward the commanding officer. "Captain, we need to talk." Miles away on a wind-swept training ground outside Missoula, Major General Richard Ames stood reviewing a formation of National Guard troops. It was routine, a state-level disaster drill. He was walking the perimeter clipboard in hand when the alert buzzed through on his encrypted tablet. A silent notification. No sound. Just 2 lines of red text. Code red. Combat veteran distress. Coordinates 118 Willow Creek Lane. Immediate response authorized. Ames stopped mid-step. His aide approached, confused. Sir, but Ames didn't answer. He tapped into the alert's metadata sender IDF Delaney. He froze. The name hit him like a body blow. He remembered the smoke, the flames, the screams echoing off armored steel. Iraq, 2004. A roadside bomb had flipped his convoy. He was trapped in a burning vehicle leg, crushed fire licking closer. Frank had crawled through shrapnel and diesel fire to pull him out of that wrecked convoy. Ames hadn't spoken for hours afterward, not out of trauma, but disbelief. That anyone would run into that kind of fire. For him. It was Frank who dragged him out. Under gunfire. Alone. Ames had never forgotten. He turned to his XO. "Cancel the drill. Mount up. Full QRF. We roll now." The convoy moved fast. Humvees roared over the back roads, sirens off tires eating gravel. No parade. No warning. 15 minutes later, Willow Creek Lane trembled under the weight of armored boots. The first Humvee swung onto the street, followed by 2 more. Soldiers in full gear disembarked like clockwork, spreading out eyes, scanning weapons low but ready. The SWAT team froze. They weren't expecting company. Neighbors peered from windows, confusion mounting. Then a final vehicle arrived, a matte black command truck. The door swung open. Major General Ames stepped out. Tall, silver-haired, eyes sharp with purpose. He scanned the scene, SWAT gear, overturned porch furniture. A man slumped against the railings, hands still cuffed. Then he saw him. Frank. Still kneeling. Still silent. Cody pressed close, tail twitching with unease. Ames didn't hesitate. He walked past the barricade, past the stunned SWAT officers, past the yelling captain trying to assert control. He dropped to one knee beside Frank. "Frank!" His voice cracked. "It's me." "Ames." Frank looked up, dazed. Recognition flickered in his eyes. A moment of clarity through the fog of pain. "You," he whispered. "You got old." Ames laughed, quiet, tight in the chest. We both did. He reached for Frank's arm, steady but gentle. "You're not alone. Not today. You're not being left behind." Frank blinked, then let his head rest back against the porch rail. Cody laid his chin on Frank's leg. Ames stood slowly, then turned. His voice changed. It boomed. "Who is in charge here?" The SWAT captain stepped forward, stiff. "Captain Harris, sir. We were executing a high-risk warrant." "On the wrong house," Ames snapped. "On a decorated Marine. On my man," Captain Harris faltered. "Our intel said 118. Your intel was lazy." Ames cut him off. "You tased a war hero on his own porch." He gestured behind him. "My men are taking over this scene. You and your team will stand down. Now." The silence was absolute. The street, the SWAT, the neighbors, everyone watched. And in that moment, for the first time that morning, Frank Delaney wasn't a suspect. He was a soldier. Major General Ames didn't repeat himself. The SWAT team stood frozen faces tight with confusion and quiet humiliation. Their rifles now hung heavy, less like authority, more like mistakes. "Stand down," Ames said again, calmer this time, but with no room for negotiation. Captain Harris swallowed, gave a tight nod, then turned to his team. "Weapons low. Clear the perimeter." Within minutes, black-vested officers backed away from the porch, leaving behind overturned flower pots, splintered door frames, and a silence thick with reckoning. Ames pointed to two of his soldiers. "Secure the house. No one enters unless I say so. We treat this as a combat-compromised zone. Understood?" "Yes, sir." A medic knelt beside Frank, checking his vitals, shining a penlight in his eyes, examining the bruises on his chest. Frank winced, but said nothing. "Sir," the medic said to Ames, "he's stable. Taser impact, he'll be sore disoriented. Possible mild concussion. And the dog." That's when another figure approached, a military vet tech kneeling beside Cody, running practiced hands along the retriever's body. He's agitated, but unharmed. No punctures, no swelling. We'll monitor him closely. Ames nodded, but his gaze stayed on Frank. The porch told a story: broken boards, a spilled coffee mug, a crushed American flag stand still lying on its side. Ames turned to his aide. "Call the engineers. I want this door replaced before sunset. And get a restoration crew out here, volunteers if we have to. This house gets put back the way he left it." "Yes, General." Within the hour, a battered military transport truck pulled up. A small team of engineers, young, alert, respectful, stepped off, carrying tools, plywood, and fresh hinges. Among them, a private named Langley. Barely 20. Still had acne under his helmet. He walked up to the door frame with quiet focus, ran a hand along the splintered wood, then dropped to his knees and started working, no orders needed. He never looked at Frank, but every movement said what he couldn't. A kind of silent tribute. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Dean stood apart from the others, helmet off, head low. He held his gloves in both hands, fidgeting. Finally, he approached. He stopped a few feet away from Frank, still sitting still, sore. Cody at his side. "I'm sorry," Dean said, voice rough. Frank didn't move. "I'm the one who called the taser. I joined SWAT after my brother got shot during a raid gone wrong. I thought I'd make things safer, make better calls. But today," he shook his head, "today I became the thing I swore to fix." Cody looked up. I thought you were reaching for something. I saw the dog tense, and I didn't think I reacted. But it was wrong. All of it." Dean took a breath. I don't expect forgiveness, sir, but I needed to say it, out loud. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Cody stood, padded slowly over to Dean, and pressed his head gently into the lieutenant's thigh. It wasn't training. It wasn't habit. It was trust offered freely, even when humans failed. Dean froze, then knelt, both hands trembling as he stroked Cody's head. Frank finally looked up. His voice was gravel. Forgiveness is earned. Dean nodded, eyes wet. Yes, sir. And still, Cody stayed. Some things didn't need permission. Ames watched from the side, arms crossed. He didn't interfere. Because in that quiet, under the broken beams of an old porch, dignity was doing what dignity does best, rebuilding one gesture at a time. The news spread fast. Local media picked up the story, decorated Marine tased in SWAT raid gone wrong. Headlines flashed across phones. Veterans' forums lit up overnight. And soon questions were being asked in places that didn't usually notice quiet streets, like Willow Creek Lane. Captain Harris and several members of his team were placed on immediate administrative leave. Internal Affairs launched a full investigation. Public pressure grew. Frank, meanwhile, said very little. He returned to his quiet life, or tried to. He still took his morning walks with Cody. Still raised the flag, though now he did it with a slower hand and a slight wince at the shoulder. Ames offered legal support. So did 3 different law firms. The city drafted a settlement proposal, 6 figures, expedited process, full liability acknowledged. Frank read the papers, folded them carefully, and slid them back across the table. I don't want the money, he said. The room went silent. He tapped the paper with one calloused finger. Send it to the Dogs for Dignity program. They train service animals for vets with PTSD. One of the attorneys blinked. You want to donate the full settlement. Frank looked up. I want the system fixed. I want that money to help someone else walk through their front door without fear. He stood, reached for Cody's leash. Justice isn't about what I get. It's about what we learn. Word got out. Quietly, respectfully. And something strange happened. People started showing up. First came his neighbors, the same ones who used to avoid eye contact, who whispered about the old vet down the road. They brought casseroles, pies, lawn chairs. They sat on his porch and listened. They asked questions. They said, sorry. One afternoon, a boy from down the block rode his bike up the gravel driveway. Maybe 8 years old, freckles across his nose helmet askew. He parked, walked straight up to Cody, and saluted. Thank you for guarding the neighborhood, sir. Frank raised an eyebrow. You talking to me or the dog? The boy grinned. Both, but mostly him. Frank chuckled, the sound rusty but real. He'll appreciate that. From that day on, Cody became known as the Porch Guard. But it wasn't just local. Frank started getting mail, handwritten letters, dozens, then hundreds. One of them wasn't a letter, but a photo creased old. Frank and Coleman, 25 years younger, standing in front of a Humvee in Iraq. On the back, 4 words in thick black ink, still got your back. From veterans in Texas, Maine, Alaska. From widows. From young Marines, still active duty. Some were just 2 lines. Thank you for reminding them we exist. You got hit, so the rest of us might be seen. One letter arrived from a man in Florida. I've been living in my garage for 3 years. Thought the world forgot us. Then I saw what you did, how you handled it. No lawsuit, no press tour, just dignity. I stood up. I walked back inside. Thank you, Sergeant. Frank kept them in a shoebox by his nightstand. Frank kept them in an old wooden ammo box, sanded down and repainted years ago. It sat beside the porch bench, weather-worn but still locked tight. Not because he wanted to forget, but because some memories deserve to be kept. Standing guard. He never read more than 2 at a time. He said it made the house feel fuller. And though he never answered them, he did write one short note tucked inside the flap of the last envelope he received. I didn't do anything special. I just stayed where I belonged, on my porch, with my dog, in the country we swore to protect. It was late afternoon on Willow Creek Lane. The kind of light that doesn't just fall, but settles. Golden. Still. Like it had nowhere else to be. Frank sat on the rebuilt porch, same wooden chair, now freshly sanded and varnished by hands younger than his. Cody lay beside him, chest rising slow and steady, tail flicking softly against the boards. The porch was quiet, but not empty. The wind made its way through the trees. The flag above them stirred gently its fabric, humming a private hymn. Then came the crunch of boots on gravel. Frank didn't need to look. He just smiled, almost imperceptibly. "Thought you retired from surprise visits," he muttered. Major General Richard Ames stepped onto the porch, carrying an old metal thermos, dented and familiar. "I did," he said, setting it down on the small table. But some wars don't end with orders. They didn't say much after that. They poured tea, let the silence hold its weight. Frank's phone buzzed once in his pocket. He glanced at it. A message from an old contact still watching your 6 old man. He smiled quietly. Coleman still had good timing. Cody shifted, stretched, then dropped his head onto Frank's boot. "Was it always this quiet?" Ames finally asked. Frank nodded. "I just couldn't hear it before." They sat like that for a while. No rank, no command, just 2 men who had walked through fire and come out each carrying the other in ways neither could fully explain. The sun dipped lower. Ames turned slightly, eyes scanning the yard, the mended door, the trimmed hedges. "You know," he said, "a strong country isn't one that never makes mistakes." Frank didn't respond. "It's one that owns them, one that stands back up and looks its people in the eye." He paused. "And when it fails, the ones who stood guard, it makes it right." Frank exhaled slowly. Sometimes, he said, making it right just means showing up. Ames looked at him steady. "That's what we did." "No," Frank corrected gently, placing a hand on Cody's back. "That's what he did. He stood between me and every bad thing every time." Cody wagged once as if he understood. The light grew softer. The thermos emptied. The sky turned to brass and memory. Some people never ask for medals. They never tell their story. They just sit on porches, with dogs who remember everything. And when they're wronged, not for glory, not for vengeance, but because they matter, a whole unit returns. Not to fight, but to restore what's harder to earn than victory. Dignity. Some wars don't end with gunfire. They end on porches, with dogs who remember, and men who refuse to forget. If someone you know ever stood guard for others quietly without applause, tag their name below. Let's make sure the quiet ones are never forgotten. Have you ever seen someone quietly protect everything and get nothing in return? If you believe dignity should never be lost in silence, hit like and share their name in the comments.